You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
I left Ethiopia actually when finishing high school, and I've been working in the finance industry in the UK. That's how the whole idea of Lovegrass Ethiopia started. And the name Lovegrass means Teff is Ethiopian. Been awarded gold medal, a silver medal for our allergen-free breakfast cereal creations. The diaspora, it has the potential to unlock what can be done in the continent, in my opinion, because we have a good understanding of what goes on outside of the continent. And for a country like Ethiopia, that sort of exposure is to be treasured.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Yonas Ademassu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find amazing people who are doing amazing things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today we have Yonas Ademassu Alemu, who is the founder of Lovegrass Ethiopia, a health food company that brings you the best of Ethiopia's agricultural produce while also bringing prosperity to the country and its people. Welcome to the podcast, Yonas. How are you?
I am very well, sir. Thank you for the beautiful welcome and for the amazing work that you guys are doing.
Oh, I appreciate it. As we kind of discussed off air, this conversation is like 2 years in the making. We keep on missing each other. One person's traveling, the other person's away. But it's brilliant that the conversation has finally arrived, and I'm looking forward to it after seeing some of the amazing work that you're doing. Obviously, the stuff that you've been sharing online. Really looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise. And I'm sorry for having been very, very busy, but the world of an entrepreneur, I guess, yes, or a startup for that, and also kind of being divided in different continents, in Europe and in Africa, etc. So there's been a lot of traveling and a lot of hassle and bustle of starting a new business. So yeah, I do apologize.
No need to apologize. It's great to have you here, and I totally understand. So thank you for that, Yonas. I know you've listened to the podcast before, and you know that I like to start from the beginning. So please introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Yonas Ademassu Alemu.
Okay. My name is Yonas Ademassu Alemu, originally from Ethiopia. I left Ethiopia actually when after finishing high school quite a while ago. That's way back in late 80s. And I've been working in the finance industry in the UK after finishing my studies here. And I went back, and the company started in 2015 and went back to Ethiopia for that purpose.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. As you mentioned, you left Ethiopia when you left high school, worked in the finance industry in the UK, started Lovegrass Ethiopia 2015, which is the reason why you moved back to Ethiopia. So can you tell us a bit more about the company, specifically the work that you're currently doing in Ethiopia or Africa as a whole?
Well, how long do you have is the question. Well, it's quite a long story. It's been a lifelong dream to go back to Ethiopia, and after having been in Europe for a few decades now, 2-3 decades, it's just you constantly question things. You constantly want to do things differently. You keep on wondering how things are done this way or that way. There are some recurring challenges, problems all around the continent. This has been a dream that's been going on, fermenting with me since I left Ethiopia, really. As you go older, and in my case, you constantly question, what value have you added? What change have you brought to the community, the people you left behind? Are you part of the problem or the solution? And, it's been a constant question inside, for myself. I used to go back to Ethiopia almost every year when I was still working in investment banking, to visit family in rural Ethiopia. And it's as if time has pretty much frozen, really. You see very, very little change. We farm the way we have always farmed for hundreds, thousands of years. The lifestyle and the way things go pretty much the same, really. And you always question, what is the progress that my life has moved on, but what is the change that I have contributed, I have brought? It's, you have this constant guilt, in my case at least. And towards the end of 2014, I noticed Teff, which is one of the most staple seeds, grains in Ethiopia. We make our staple food, which is injera. Anyone who knows Ethiopia or who has visited Ethiopia or has a friend, an Ethiopian or Eritrean friend, knows this flat bread we eat. It's called injera. It's made from this tiny grass seed grain called teff. I recently go to learn about fonio in the western part of Africa, which is pretty much the same, although teff is even smaller than fonio. It's the smallest edible seed in the world. In Ethiopia, it's a staple, and we've been growing it for thousands of years, as I said. It's really, you cannot separate Ethiopian identity of food if you take away teff. And then I started seeing it here in the market in the gluten, because it's a very, very healthy seed. It's naturally gluten-free, because it's so small. You just mill it. You don't dehull it, so it's intact with the fiber and iron and calcium, magnesium. It's a fantastic seed. In fact, nutritionally, it's at par with quinoa.
Okay.
Famous quinoa, no? And then I start seeing it here in the UK, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it must be coming from Ethiopia. But of course, to my horror, I discovered it actually doesn't come from Ethiopia. It started growing in the US mainly. And not only that, it is growing outside of Ethiopia. It's actually, a patent has been issued against the use of teff flour to a Dutch business group, and literally dispossessing Ethiopia and the Ethiopian farmer, obviously, from the use of this ancient heritage grain. So that's how my business idea started. Well, what value? There's no point complaining about it. I mean, what value can I add? The reason why Ethiopia as a nation, or the farming community in the country haven't been able to make use of it, teff for commercial uses, because we don't have institutional capacity in the country to commercialize it, to develop commercial products that the world could use. So there's no point for me complaining about it. If something is to happen, then, what value can I add? And that's how the whole idea of Lovegrass Ethiopia started. And Lovegrass, the name Lovegrass means teff. So Lovegrass Ethiopia really is saying teff is Ethiopian. That is the origin of the company.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Yonas. So if we take a few steps back in terms of your journey moving back to Ethiopia, has it been a smooth transition, or has there been a few bumps along the way?
Nah, it would be boring if it is smooth, huh?
Very true.
No. It's never smooth. It's never smooth, and it's never easy. But of course, anything worthy of doing, is never easy and smooth. There's lots of ups and downs. For a start, my family live in the UK. My wife, my children, and kind of uprooting them with the schools and stuff is impossible. So to uproot myself, which means I have to separate myself from my family. That alone is quite a task. But of course, when you go back to Ethiopia, things are not smooth. It never is. There's a lot of readjusting because I've also been out of Ethiopia for a very, very long time. So going back, you kind of have to reprogram a lot of the things, your beliefs and your understanding of how things are done there. So there was a lot of adjusting that needed to be done. Quite a lot, just to get the land to build the factory that I wanted to set up was an uphill struggle. Just to find people who believe, this it can be done. People who believe that the decision makers, the banks, good staff whom you want to join you in this mission. The entire journey hasn't been a smooth one. I can tell you that, but an excellent one at the same time.
I totally understand. As you mentioned, you have to reprogram and adjust. So would you say you're fully adjusted now?
No. I can tell you. And then that's good as well. I mean, in a sense, that's why I went back. I don't want to be accepting and be complacent and happy by the status quo. I actually enjoy and justify it for my own self to just continue questioning how we do things. How the finance sector operates. Obviously, my background being finance in Ethiopia, how banks operate and prioritize their lending and investment selections, how governments prioritize different projects, the overall policy framework. You question everything, and I'm okay with it. I mean, if I'm not to be questioning these things, then my presence there is of no relevance. So yeah, no, it's never going. It's not going to be like 100%. I'm happy the way things are done. No, I question things every day, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So as you mentioned, you're very comfortable with questioning things from finance to government, which also enables you to progress and move forward with the business. So in order to progress and move forward with the business, what have been some of the most common challenges that you've had to overcome to build this productive and sustainable business that you have?
Sir, I think that the first thing, I'm sure this is not necessarily an Ethiopian challenge. I think it's a continental, it's an African challenge. I think the first thing we need to start with is just that it is possible, that we can do it. We need to aim in really, really high, way, way high. Otherwise, it's, for me personally, if it is just a very simple thing, then it just doesn't excite me. The challenge and the mission we set out ought to be really way, way up there. But the biggest challenge I have for me is finding people who believe in it, who can think, it's possible. When you have a mission, a really, really big one, with a big goal, with a big vision, you have to have people who believe in it to be with you. Otherwise, you can't do it on your own. And also you need the backing of, the state, government, regional, local authorities in Ethiopia. You need the backing, you need the banking industry, as I say, the finance industry, the investment community. And when everyone thinks it's not possible, if they don't believe in your vision and dream, then change becomes very difficult to make. Because when I set up Lovegrass, before I even left my job in London, in Canary Wharf, I had clearly set the values. We call it now the 3 tenets of Lovegrass. Those tenets were, can we produce outstanding products that the world would want to buy from us? Can we brand it? Can we can we tell our own marketing story, an African and Ethiopian marketing story to the world? Can we work with local farmers and then just question the way things are done? It's been done for millennia, for thousands of years, and it's just accepted as that is the only way to do things. No, can you question it? Can you bring some change? Just perturb the way farmers or locals think about it. Can you bring or develop a product that can fight malnutrition, which is pretty much endemic in some rural parts of the country, and that cannot be accepted as the norm. These are things we set as very, very high value. But in the first place, if you think it cannot be changed or it cannot be done, then that's it. It's self-defeating. So finding people and institutions to work with you who believe in this mission and vision, it's not just providing lip service, but actually back it up, supports you. It hasn't been an easy one.
But despite the challenges, as you mentioned, things are possible. But for you to achieve these possibilities in your line of work or business, you need access to farms, which is essential. So what has been the process of forming, say, relationship with farmers and investing in farms in order to guarantee the consistent and good quality supply of teff that you provide?
Mm-hmm. I think this is probably where the benefit of being a diaspora is, and I think this probably speaks to most African diaspora who live, around the world. You have that intimate knowledge and understanding of the society you left behind. It's not wasted. It's an incredibly valuable, transformative tool if you want to bring any change for the community and then to do something of value. For me, my understanding of the rural community, because I was one of them just as it was a child before I left to Europe as a scholarship student. It's incredibly valuable. You have good understanding, the nuances, the intricacies of what people mean, the body talk they're going on. And no does not necessarily mean a no in some cases. A yes doesn't necessarily mean a yes, but it. You grew up there, and those things really matter. So the first thing I did when I went back there is to reconnect and then to really understand the supply chain of what was going on. Understanding what the real problem for the farming community is. You can go there claiming that you know the solution, but the reality is you probably are missing it. So you really have to have a good understanding. I personally used to go to something in the region of 400 or 500 kilometers away from the capital city, in really, really rural areas, and then spend time there and then see how people work, how people live, and what change, what difference you can make. This has been many years in the making, really, because traditionally a farmer produces and his little produce will be sold to a local businessman. A lot of the farmers are actually illiterate, so the local businessman just gives them whatever his heart tells him is fair. If it's 100 kilos of teff, the local businessman can say, it's 95 or it's 90 kilo, and the farmer will just accept that and receive the money. And that local businessman will then sell the produce he collected to someone who has a truck to take it to the capital city. And that truck driver or owner will take it to the capital city and sells the grain, the products to. There is a big market. It's called Mercato, which is almost the norm, really. the biggest open market in the country. And then their big, very well-established businessmen will collect on the Teff, and then they will sell it to small mills dotted all around the capital city or in urban areas. You can just see the chain, even that chain has never been perturbed. It has never been disturbed. And the farmer just accepts this as his fate. He just have to produce and hand it over to the trader. So you really had to understand all this and then see what value can you add to the farmer, what technology can we bring, what logistics system we could do, what investment specialized in selected seeds, even branding their produce. So that's where it all started before we even start work on the factory.
You made an important point about the knowledge you bring from the diaspora is important. What value would you say that you specifically have brought to the local agricultural environments that you're operating in?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it, sir, because it's very close to my heart. You're right. I think the diaspora can unlock the potential. It has the potential to unlock what can be done in the continent, in my opinion, because we have a good understanding of what goes on. Not everyone, of course, what goes on outside of the continent. And for a country like Ethiopia, that sort of exposure is to be treasured because especially Ethiopia, it hasn't been colonized and it's a very rugged landscape. And you may find some rural areas where they've hardly been ventured into, hardly any form of technology or access to the outside world. It is very, very rare. So when you go there, of course, you have to be respectful of what's going on. But you can really bring a lot. You know where the world is going, the global market trends and what goes on. So for me, when I go to the rural area, as I said, one of the 3 tenets of Lovegrass Ethiopia, our company, when we started, was to see what can we do to perturb the thought process, kind of the way of doing things in the farming community. So we engaged the Ethiopian Agricultural Research Institute. It's a government institute, one of the oldest institutes in the country. And, kind of poorly funded, unfortunately, but there are lots of well-meaning researchers there who have a lot of knowledge on what's going on around the country, the different landscapes, what can be produced and what cannot. So they know very well the local challenges. So the first thing I did was to actually connect with them and then explain to them my desires and what I would love to do with local farmers. Again, the biggest challenge was to win their trust. Because you see a lot of well-meaning charities and people from diaspora, they go, they promise the world, and nothing materializes or not much gets achieved. There is this charity fatigue that goes on.
I understand.
So they were winning their trust wasn't an easy one, but once they noticed and they realized what I have left behind, my own background, and I wasn't the kind who just give up and walk away. A few years is a lot of lots of camaraderie and really good understanding before we engaged the farmers. So then we realized, the farmers need access to technology. You see, the biggest problem, in my opinion, is people, especially the decision makers, the lack of understanding, should I say, that farmers are just businessmen and women. They are. They may be as a rural and as small. We could be talking as a question of scale, whether you use a tractor and combine harvester, or you are using ox plow, or doing it by hand, etc. At the end of the day, a farmer or a smallholder farmer in rural Africa simply uses land. He uses his labor and whatever resource he has, finance he has, and produces something, and just prays and hopes that whatever he produces fetches him more money that has invested. And that, to me, that's a classic definition of a business person. So farmers are just business people. And in a country like Ethiopia, which is an agrarian society, of 75% of the population lives pretty much the way I just described, very, very small holding farming community. So the first thing is to understand, what are they? They are just business people. Business people require finance, okay? That is the fuel that if you want to bring any change, you have to be able to finance it. Coming up with an idea is one thing, but if you cannot finance it, then just forget it. So when I approach the farming community, the first thing we do is, okay, so first definition-wise, they are just business people. They require financing, they require technology, ideally a tractor, a harvesting machine, so they don't have to do it by hand and they become more productive. They will need selected seeds. They will need post-harvest losses, technologies to reduce post-harvest losses, to be able to connect them to the market and to be able to brand their produce. All these things cost. So we properly priced the initial seed capital that we require to be able to bring change. And then also the other thing, one needs to be careful. You cannot change the world. You have to be able to work on a small model, on a small sample. And that's what we did. We selected a very, very rural area, 3 waradas of regions of around 600 plus farmers. And then we started working with them and convincing them. Again, that element of doubt always exists. Oh, here we go, an outsider comes, talks, and then walks away. So you have to win their trust. But of course, that's what we did. We bought the tractor, we provided selected seeds, we provided them with the kind of training they require. We employ agronomists, etc. So that's how our engagement with the farming community started.
What impact would you say the introduction of the technology that you've brought and the processes had on the productivity and also increased outputs on the farms that you operate?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm happy to report that just last year, in the area that we worked, again, we cannot take all the praise here, but the Agricultural Research Institute have been also instrumental. They've been really helpful of our effort. In the area that we operate, the farmers used to produce around 1.4 tons per hectare. With just a small activity that we have done so far, in 1 year they managed to increase that to 2.2 tons per hectare.
Wow.
That is a huge upside swing in productivity. I mean, can you imagine your salary literally doubling in a year? These are very, very small efforts, very small investment. But the plan, the model we are trying to develop, and for me, my dream is with that small scale investment in a very, very selected and well-controlled environment, a small scale, in a small area, if you can prove a workable model and that financially, the financial well-being of those farmers can be improved, which means they will have, in our case, for example, just last year, over 80% of additional increase in their income, which means they can start to self-finance. As I say, the initial seed capital may have come from us, but they will start to self-finance, and hopefully microfinance institutes and banks can be engaged, because we can prove to them that, look, farmers can produce more. My dream, my hope is, after a while, why should the farmers sell just the grain they produce? Why don't they mill it and sell flour? Why don't they put more value addition? Why don't they brand their produce instead of just driving it into a trader? They can brand it, they give it a name. And God forbids, why not? We could even create snacks out of it, breakfast cereal, pasta. They can start selling value addition. I mean, this is a model that I'm hoping that we can develop, or at least continue trying to develop. Yeah.
I mean, you've managed to add value to the products that you sell through Lovegrass Ethiopia, which has enabled you to successfully export products as well to UK and Europe. So what has been the process of reaching, some of those quite onerous quality control and standards that are required to export to Europe?
Yeah, again, really, really good question, Teresa, because I can speak what I observe in Ethiopia, but this is really pretty much the norm in the whole continent. I think we set our standards quite low. We have to learn to rise, and then the expectation need to be so high. The quality expectation need to be so high, and that's not just only around production here. Well, I'm not really, producing is one thing. I'm not saying it's an easy task, but the whole marketing exercise, the branding exercise,
yes,
the stories we tell, the relationships we build. Nobody is going to be willing and just opening their markets around the world and say, "Oh yeah, bring it on. We'll sell it here." No, I mean everybody will erect their trade barriers and protect their turf. And for an African manufacturer to be able to make it, it's tough enough being African. But if your quality standard is above and beyond what is produced in Europe, or at least at par to what's being produced in kind of the developed economies, then forget it. I mean, it's just not going to work. As a matter of fact, this is a very important point. There's my observation is a lot of people in the continent, people in Ethiopia, at least I can tell you for certain, people talk about, import replacement. Even if you don't export, it will be good for import replacement. I don't believe that model will work. The market, everybody, every country is opening its market to the world. If you cannot compete in a European market, you cannot compete in an African market. The Chinese manufacturer can dump outstanding products to the African market, and it can also dump, rubbish products to the African market. An African producer need to be ready to set the standards high, so high he or she will be able to compete in the developed market around the world. I'm well aware of that. I mean, I had this feeling that is what we needed to do when I started Lovegrass Ethiopia. So there was no cutting corners. We set out to be BRC certified. We set out to be kind of a proudly Ethiopian business. I mean, no hiding that fact. We don't want to hide it. In fact, our own trading name, our brand is called Lovegrass Ethiopia. It's in the brand. But having that name, as you know, Ethiopia is not a wonderfully branded country when it comes to the health food market around the world. So we needed our quality ought to be above and beyond what's in the market. So that's how we set out to be BRC standard, BRC certified, to tell our own story, full Ethiopian brand. In fact, in every package of our product, we say proudly made in Ethiopia, and people need to see value in it and to be incredibly consistent on quality. No cutting corner. If you do that, you will get caught at some point. Yeah, that's how we have managed to get to where we are so far.
That's great to hear. You touched on the production side. I know your Teff is produced or processed in a factory in Addis that you built and own. So what was the process of building the factory, in terms of financing, finding the right machinery, and just the whole logistical movements as well?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it hasn't been easy. So let me just start from there. It hasn't been easy at all. Partly because, I mean, I'm not from the food industry. As I said, I've been in banking, investment banking, and the trading floors or on risk management area for almost 2 decades. So, kind of suddenly I am talking about the health food sector and a very, very incredibly competitive cereal market. It is incredibly competitive. Where do you start? I mean, what is quality? What is good? What is in trend? And you really have to just unlearn all the things you've learned so far and just start from scratch. Where do you go for a machinery, for experts? And nobody trusts you. I mean, here you are, someone not from the food industry, no major banker or no major investor is behind you, and you just tell investors or machine suppliers or technologists, and then tell them, oh look, there is this grain in Africa. I want to produce amazing products and sell it to Whole Foods, or it's a joke. Nobody believes you. So it hasn't been an easy one. There's been lots of day and night reading and figuring it out, and yeah, trial by fire. Actually, all sorts of scar tissues all over myself.
I can
it's
imagine.
lots of trial and errors. I tell you, lots of trial. I look back at some of the things I have done. I'm like, I cringe. I'm like, oh, did I do that? It's embarrassing. So, but when you have a clearly defined mission, something that so truly speaks to you, Telsa, nothing stops you. All those challenges. I mean, I do sometimes now when I look back and I say, oh my God, if I was to restart again, would I do it? Really, would I do it? It's incredible, So it hasn't been easy.
Is it safe to say that you control the full end-to-end supply value chain from farm to factory?
Yes, it is. It is. Again, another challenge for a fellow diaspora who will attempt something like this is a realization that we don't have a well-developed, specialized businesses in the continent. By and large, of course, there might be some markets that's different. So we started to say, okay, it has to be gluten-free. It has to be BRC certified, which means every supplier need to have a supplier approval program that need to pass our quality standard. And even if you meet a supplier or a miller or whatever, they don't want to open their books up for you. They don't want you anywhere near. So for me to get that trust, to build the trust that our products can go around the world and proudly claim we are gluten-free, we are allergen-free. I had to start working from the grassroots, like as I said, from the farm. We get the product directly into our warehouse. From our own warehouse, we have to clean it ourselves. We have to mill it ourselves. We have to extrude it ourselves, package it ourselves, and store it before it goes into the market. I mean, literally the entire chain you have to be able to handle. Otherwise, you've got that third-party dependency, which you have no control over. So yes, you can say that.
With all the work you're doing from end to end, are there any specific, say, government policies that have played a key role in enabling you to do what you are doing?
Okay. I mean, look, there is no government in the continent that doesn't want inward investment like this. Everybody will say, at least they say it at least. But the rest is really up to you, to be perfectly honest. You really have to make it happen. If you want like an easy ride where things are done for you, it will never happen. So I think if it does, if there is a lot of government, state support, regional authorities, unions, etc., if they support you, you're lucky. grab it. But the expectation needs to be managed there. I think prepare yourself for pretty much having to do it yourself. I can tell you, when we got the lease land, I had to build the road, over a kilometer of road to be able to access it.
Oh, wow.
I had to dig my own borehole water supply, lifting the whole infrastructure, the electricity supply, virtually everything. You have to work like day in, day out to make it happen. This is not to blame governments, but they have a lot of priorities, lots of other issues. Also, if you ask me, I'll say manufacturing, especially export manufacturing in agro-processing, particularly because, the continent is agrarian, really, by and large. So it needs to be given serious priority, in my opinion, if we are to bring any form of change in that continent. Again, I speak about the continent, by the way, because it does. Yes. Whatever I experience in Ethiopia, it's pretty much, give or take, the same experience around the continent. And for an agrarian continent, if you don't agro-process, if you don't value add, if you don't tell your own marketing story, if you don't reach the world with value-added proper work, I don't know what kind of change can come. So, priorities need to be given. By the way, a lot of people say, the government does this, does that, give priorities to this sector, etc. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. If we don't see a lot of agro-processors in that continent, it's because it's not an attractive area. You have to make it attractive. If it is attractive, the business community will fly in. The entrepreneurs always go where, they follow the path of least resistance, and that can be said about businesses generally. So that is a sector that just needs to be supported, in my opinion.
I agree. So if we move from internal government support and look at external factors, I know the last few years have been interesting for all of us. We've had to contend with the likes of COVID, to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, to the global economic downturn. How has that impacted the work you're doing, from the inputs to also the outputs?
Well, that's such an important topic. But, one thing is for sure, again, for me, when things go tough, I go back to the mission, I go back to the vision, and I just cannot let go. I cannot fail so many people that depend on it, or that I promise change will come because of this process or that. As you say, the last few years it's been traumatic. During COVID time, we were just about to install our machinery. It was imported. It was sitting in a container, and then the whole thing just shut down. Technicians cannot come from the UK, from South Africa, Turkey. These were people who were supposed to install the factory and train our team, and nobody can travel. It's been traumatic, and you cannot fire your team because technicians are not going to come and install it. You have to keep on paying stuff. It hasn't been an easy one, but you just have to keep positive. The journey of an entrepreneur is, it's a journey of longevity. Just stay one more day, one more night longer, stick with it. Just one more day, survive one more day, and the sun comes out, and then the good times come back again, and
yes,
the energy comes back, anyways. So it hasn't been easy, but we're still around and we're thriving.
Have you, or did you have to significantly change your business model as a consequence of any of these factors?
Yes. As I said, I was not from this industry, the food industry or manufacturing. I knew nothing about manufacturing, nothing. So the only thing we haven't changed is the text, the mission that I wrote, the 3 tenets of Lovegrass. Can we brand, manufacture in Ethiopia, use an Ethiopian raw material and tell an Ethiopian story, and bring our products to the world? That is the first one. The second one is, can we work with rural farmers and then work on a model that can bring something different, something better, more productive way of doing things or seeing things, and just perturb the way they think. That is the second one. The third one is this nutrition, fighting malnutrition. We have developed a product called Birtu, which means strength or stamina in Ethiopian local language. It's a sachet imitating a local powdered beverage called beso. It's full of vitamins. This is a protein shake, basically, full of all essential vitamins, amino acids. It's fortified. And all you need to do is when you have water, you just mix it, hydrate it, and drink it. And then your body has all your essential vitamins, minerals, proteins. So across these whole three tenets that we set out to achieve, they remain intact. That doesn't change. But the way we go there, oh my God, I have changed so many so many ways of doing things. So yeah, it has moved on.
I totally understand. It's clear that you've gained a wealth of knowledge from your experience. What tips would you give to someone who is involved in agriculture on the continent and they potentially have ambitions of scaling and hopefully doing what you have done and being able to export to international markets?
Yeah, I think a lot of it we have already talked about it, but I think you have to aim very, very high, very, very high, the standards in terms of quality, in terms of messaging. You have to have very, very big objectives and high aims, but also the wells of knowledge out there is just incredible. I read non-stop day in, day out, all the difference. I mean, right now it's about scaling. How do you scale? How do you bring in talent? You cannot do it on your own. You have to have good people around. I've been fortunate to be surrounded with some extraordinary people who just genuinely believe on the mission of what we are trying to achieve. So believe that you have to aim high. You're not competing in your little market. You are competing across the globe. A Chinese manufacturer can dump his or her product in your local little market. So aim really high, especially if you want to export your produce. And one of the biggest things also for me, the lesson I've learned is try to be quite strategic in a sense. You may not be able to compete with the big players in a very obvious way. Find a niche area where you have a fighting chance of accessing, maybe serving your community who live abroad, or maybe a product that exists in your local area and not in any other parts of the world. There's plenty of produce like that in the continent, by the way. Some special messaging, branding, by the way, some stories you want to tell, you want to share to the world, and some niche areas like that could help you grow. And once you do that, then you can expand the envelope and then go into bigger markets. A lot of things to say in this area. It's a very good question.
I can imagine. During the conversation, we've talked at length about your journey and experience. If we look outside of that at the wider environment, are there any trends in Ethiopia's agriculture sector that you're seeing that you're currently excited about? What
makes me excited, I do get to travel in the continent generally now, not just in Ethiopia. What makes me really, really excited, honestly, is just the energy of the youth, the desire to change, and the desire to bring something new for themselves, for their community. You did ask me about agriculture. As I mentioned it earlier, I think the Ethiopian farmer, the rural residents, is kind of, it needs a lot of new ideas, new thoughts, new investments, a new model to be developed. Things need to be questioned constantly. And the youth are ready for it, even those who I always question, as I started this interview by saying, I always question, non-stop. So and the youth are ready to listen, to hear. What they need is to see a model in their own environment, in their own locality, in their own space, a model being developed, and they say it. Initially, it was all a talk. When I talk about Lovegrass, and when I say, oh, we want to tell our own story marketing, so we want to go around, we want to brand our own stuff. The factory is going to be 100%, locals being trained, and which it is, by the way. It was all like, right, kind of Don Quixote kind of thing. All right, yeah, good luck. But now they see it, it can be done, and they use the energy is just incredible. With the use of technology. So I think it's tapping into that energy and then showing by developing a model that works. It gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you for sharing that. So if we move from current trends and look at the future, where do you see Ethiopia or Africa's agriculture sector in 5 years' time? Are we going to see more productivity, easier ways of doing business? Where do you see it going?
I think we need to rethink a lot of what we have believed is our way for the future and for the youth. Allow me to explain what I mean by that. Because when I grew up, Ethiopian coffee, it was our number one asset. We talk about coffee, sesame, etc., which is fine. That is one competitive advantage. But, the world has moved on. The youth are capable of doing way more. In fact, I can even go as far as say, we don't have to even focus on what we have done in the past. And this is a continent that led past, the industrial age and, the electronic age. And now we're just sitting there and letting the information age passing us by. And I think even agriculture, in a sense, we need to find niche areas. What can we export? What value can you add? Technology is a great enabler in all this. And when I say technology, I don't just necessarily mean information technology. Manufacturing technology has evolved and providing access to that. And how can we transform, say, what we produce? How can we pack it? How can we brand it? How can we reach out to the world? We need to think slightly different. By just going around the way we've done 30, 40 years, whatever, when I was a little boy, doing the same product again and talking about the same product again and again, change ought to come. We need to think slightly differently.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree. If we look closer to home, where do you see yourself and Lovegrass Ethiopia in 5 years' time? What role do you hope to play in Ethiopia's agricultural space?
There is a lot of hope. We've got lots of products we have started bringing to the world. We're developing more products, a lot of fascinating ingredients, just incredible ingredients that we could use. Of course, we don't just sell those raw ingredients. We want to value add them and bring amazing products more and more to the world. For Lovegrass, as you know, we're winning awards. It's just a few weeks ago, we've been awarded gold medal, a silver medal.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For our breakfast cereal creations, our allergen-free breakfast cereal. The award was here in London, by the way, the free from food competition. We are in Europe and we want to expand that in mainland Europe. We haven't even touched the Americas just yet. Asia, equally the same. And of course, these things require a lot of investment. And the whole project so far has been self-financed. I've been in a fortunate position to be able to self-finance and also bootstrap it to where we are now. But scaling up, it requires a lot of financing. So, we're looking for external financing as well. But I think another exciting thing is in Cairo in November. I was in Cairo in the IATF Inter-Africa Trade Fair in November, I think it was. It was just amazing meeting all those African businesses in one space, in one exhibition. seeing the similarities of our challenges and our development stages, and then sharing our different ways of doing things. And then what fascinated me is, and really, I mean, I should know this better, being the age that I am, but just across the border, in Kenya, for example, or in Uganda, in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, this is a huge market, and a lot of their products come from the UK. And here I am trying to export my products from Ethiopia to the UK, and then across the border, the Kenyans are getting it from it's really, really bizarre setup. So the continent is with all its challenges, is a huge opportunity for manufacturers. Huge opportunity. So for Lovegrass Ethiopia, that's our next frontier. We're working on opening our branch in Nairobi, in Kenya, to be able to serve that East African community. There's a lot of exciting journey ahead.
Brilliant, and I look forward to seeing how that develops.
Thank you.
Quote of the week.
As people, we often have quotes, mantras, proverbs, or affirmations that keep us going when times are challenging or when times are good. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
Nothing that comes to mind, but the one thing, my one lesson I would say is just have something that speaks to you above and beyond money and other material things. Have something that so truly speaks to you in your heart of hearts, and then just wakes you up during the night. And if you have that, all the different day-to-day challenges you see, you just a bump on the road, you'll just pass it. Otherwise, it's not an easy journey. So make sure you have something that speaks to you truly.
I agree. And that is a fantastic way to close today's conversation. Yonas, thank you. It's been an extremely enlightening and educational discussion. And I think from what we've discussed today, it's clear that you're doing some wonderful things that are much needed on the continent. And I also hope today's discussion has inspired other entrepreneurs who have ambitions of growing sustainable businesses such as yourself to go out and do it. So thank you for your time. It's been a great discussion, and I look forward to keeping in contact, keeping updated in terms of the progress you make in the near future.
We will do. Thank you so much, sir. You're doing an amazing job. And I think the possibilities are infinite out there for a lot of people, a lot of the African youth. Thank you so much.
I agree. And thank you for your time, Yonas. It has been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you, and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.